Does this scenario sound familiar to you? You start a new job, you're super excited, and everything seems to be lining up. The interview process was smooth, the hiring manager seems like he'd be a good person to work for, and the company seems to check all of your boxes. However, once you get started and the honeymoon phase wears off, you start noticing some signs that are a little bit unnerving. And you try to brush them aside. And then you start wondering if you made a colossal mistake because the signs of a toxic employer are everywhere. And unfortunately, this scenario is more common than you might think. So stick around because in this video, I'm going to share with you 7 signs that your new company may be toxic. And more importantly, what to do about it. Hey everybody, it's Brian from Life After Layoff, and today I want to share with you some signs that the new company that you just joined, that you're all excited about, might actually not be what it seems. Starting a new job is often a very exciting time in one's career journey. It's a time filled of anticipation, opportunity, and the possibility of career growth. However, not all companies and opportunities are created equal, and what might seem like a dream job on the surface might turn into a nightmare if the company turns out to be toxic. And therefore, identifying these toxic traits early into your tenure is crucially important because it can save you a lot of grief in the long run, and it may just save your career from being derailed, because one bad employer can set you off on a bad course and can significantly weaken your resume. And I've often found that one bad job leads to another bad job, leads to another. And of course, we want to avoid that if we want to be the CEOs of our career. So in this video, let's break down the 7 signs that I see most commonly in my career coaching sessions with people who are trying to navigate these murky waters of toxic employers. But before we get into that, if you're interested in learning how to reclaim control and start to become the CEO of your career, make sure you sign up for my free newsletter. And in it, I share concise, actionable tips on how to approach a job search and your career with more conviction and authority, ultimately reclaiming control and being the CEO of your career. And again, it's absolutely free, so I hope to see you there. And if you're interested in signing up, check out the description in this video, and there's a link there. I'd also like to thank this video's sponsor, Delete Me, and we'll talk more about them in a little bit. So the first sign to look for that your new company may be toxic is one that hopefully you're catching before you join the organization. But this one might be a little bit tricky to discover until you actually start, because most companies are not going to disclose this right out of the gate. And it's high turnover rates. And this one might be a little bit surprising to you because you join the organization, you join your new department, and everything seems to be going great. But suddenly you start noticing the guy who trained you, or the person who interviewed you even, who talked up the job and talked up the organization, is ending up quitting. And you're kind of scratching your head going like, that guy just literally told me that this is a great place to work, yet he's going off to a similar job at another organization. And oh, by the way, this other guy is doing the same thing. I've actually talked to several people whose bosses ended up leaving once they joined the organization. In fact, they started, and within a week or two, their boss left the organization, and then suddenly they got a new boss, and they're sitting there scratching their head going, what should I do? So obviously turnover rates are a big indicator of something amiss in the organization, and you have to look at where the turnover is happening. Is it happening at the leadership level, or is it happening at the senior individual contributor level in your organization? And if you look around your department, you realize that the longest tenured person's only been there for 8 months. You have to ask yourself, why is that? So high turnover rates are definitely something to pay attention to. It's a major warning sign that something's amiss in the organization, and you may want to try to drill down on it a little bit further. And just a little tip here, before you join an organization, you should always be conducting reverse reference checks. So I'm gonna do a little bit of investigative research. I'm gonna go into LinkedIn and some other places. I'm gonna try to find who used to sit in the roles in this department, hopefully reporting to the same hiring manager. And I'm just gonna ask them if they'd be willing to talk to me just for 5 minutes about their experience and whether or not they would come back to the organization and to that boss. The next major sign to look for is a lack of transparency. And this is when the senior leadership team is making very big decisions that affect a lot of employees, and they're very hush-hush about it. So oftentimes behind closed doors, they're not giving any details about it. And often when they announce things, it's kind of dumped on people and everybody's really surprised. And the reason why this is an issue is because it indicates that there is a lack of communication, or communication might be stifled, or there might be a toxic senior leadership trait where they don't want to share things with employees, and it's likely because they don't trust the employee's opinion or they're not valued. Now, of course, most strategic decisions are made behind closed doors by the executive team, But in healthy organizations, there is a fostering of communication. They'll have town hall meetings. Departments will let you know what's going on. The boss will come in and they'll say, this is the things that are being talked about so that it's not a big surprise. But oftentimes in toxic organizations, the boss wants to keep their world very small and very tight knit. And another sign of a toxic company is that they misuse or sell your data without you knowing about it. And this is a very common thing that happens in industry, and companies often will sell payroll data or any information that you put in your HRIS system, so the human resource information systems, and in a lot of cases your application data. So when you're applying for jobs, any of the information that you fill out, it's typically being filtered over to aggregators like Equifax, and then they end up selling it to a bunch of data brokers. So if you're getting a lot of robocalls, it's often because data brokers are buying your information that's made for sale by Equifax and other companies because your organization ended up selling it to them inadvertently. But the good news is that there is a solution to that, and it's actually one that I've been using myself. It's called Delete Me. Delete Me makes it quick, easy, and safe to remove your personal data online and get it out of the hands of those data brokers. So how it works is really easy. Is you go and you fill out an online form through their website, then it'll submit it for removal from these search engines and these data broker sites. And the nice thing is they automatically handle removing your information for you, so you don't have to do all this legwork and try to figure out where your information is. Then after 7 days, they'll send you a very detailed report, and then you get reports periodically throughout the year. Once you sign up for the service, it'll continue to look throughout the year and remove any new data brokers that might have purchased your information. So it's a little bit like whack-a-mole. They constantly are popping up, so it's nice to have a service that's always looking to remove that stuff. And if you're interested in checking out the service yourself, you can use the code LAYOFF to get a 20% discount. I'll leave a link down in the comments for you to check it out if you're interested. The next sign to look for that your new company might be toxic is micromanagement. Now, this might feel like a little bit of a bait and switch where you start into a new organization, your boss pitches you a bill of goods in the interview process, so you're thinking that you're signing up for a certain thing, and then suddenly you come in and you find out that they're not trusting you, that they're looking over your shoulder, that they're wanting to double check and triple check everything that you're doing, and they're telling you exactly how they want things done. So you feel like you're stifled creatively, and you're starting to feel like they don't believe in who they hired. And not to mention, being micromanaged can make you feel like you're incapable, and it can affect your confidence. But micromanagement doesn't always have to happen just from your boss. It could be from coworkers that you might be working closely with, or business partners, maybe other divisions, or even customers. And honestly, it could even be processes. And in fact, I've worked for a company, and you know who they are, you've probably used their service, but they micromanaged their entire staff through processes. And it didn't matter what role, whether you were an engineer, you were a leader, or you were somebody in human resources. Every single thing that you did had a process that was defined, and you had to go through a checkbox, and then you were audited by somebody else to see how accurate you were with it. So the micromanaging wasn't necessarily directly from my boss, but the organizational culture was very micromanaging, and it was not a good cultural fit for me, and I ended up leaving not too terribly long into my tenure. Next up is everybody's favorite, which is a poor work-life balance. Now, I know this term gets used very loosely, and there is a wide definition to work-life balance. Now, I wouldn't consider work-life balance to be an issue if there's just a random spike in activity where it might be a particular customer or project that needs to get out the door and you have to work a little bit of extra hours, a little extra effort. But I'm talking about a consistent, pervasive work-life issue. When you're consistently finding that you have to work 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks just to get the job done and to keep your head above water, it's a really good indicator that they haven't staffed that role well, or they may have laid people off in the past and now they're kind of passing all that work down. And in a lot of cases, companies forcing people back into the office after having been remote can be also factored into the work-life balance issue. And this one's especially disappointing when you start into a new organization, you think it's going to be great, and suddenly you're looking around at all your coworkers who are totally stressed out, and your boss has an expectation for everybody to produce to a certain level. And being the new guy, you're trying to make a name for yourself, and you're trying to keep pace with everybody else. But even though this productive person's going to get burnt out eventually, and if the culture of the organization is that they just expect too much from people and they don't give enough resources, then it's a good indicator that's a toxic place to work. Next up is a resistance to change or feedback. Healthy organizations encourage open dialogue, feedback, and a spirit of continuous improvement. And if you find that you joined an organization where they're very resistant to that, or they tell you things like, well, you're just the new guy, you need to get your feet under you, and they keep throttling you when you try to bring up constructive feedback or give suggestions on how to improve something, and that's a good indicator they're not open to continuous improvement and hearing suggestions. Of course, we all want to feel valued, and let's be real, you were selected for that role because you had a certain set of experiences that hopefully they would parlay into improving their organizations. So when you find out that a boss or your coworkers are not so supportive of it, it can be very discouraging. Taking a step further, if you find that people are bullying or harassing you or making you feel very uncomfortable in your job, that's another indicator of a very toxic environment. No employee should ever feel unsafe or subjected to bullying in the workplace setting. And this can be very subtle. It can be a form of hazing. And I know in some work cultures I've been in, there was a palpable sense of you're the new guy and they kind of don't treat you the right way. So be very aware if you're dealing with toxic coworkers, bosses, or even customers, and the organization is tolerating that, that's probably not a winnable situation. Now, obviously, this is not an inclusive list. There's lots of other toxic signs or toxic traits for organizations, but these are the main ones that I encounter in my career coaching sessions. And so if you're somebody that is dealing with these types of things, my best recommendation to you would be to assess the situation and determine whether or not it's fixable. And if it isn't, I wouldn't wait too long to pull the cord and try something else. It's not worth the risk to your career in making your resume look weaker. So make a decision that's best for you. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're ready to make a change and you just don't know what to do, it's actually something that I specialize in. And I have a website called lifeafterlayoff.com, and it's littered with tips and tricks, all from a recruiting insider's perspective. And I share my deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of some training courses. The first one is called Resume Rocketfuel, which is designed to teach you how to write a resume so that you get the phone to start ringing and hopefully can get out of that toxic situation. But once your targeted resume starts to gain the attention of recruiters, you want to make sure that you're navigating through the process effectively as possible. So that's why I created a course called the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp. It takes you from job search all the way through job offer, and it breaks down each step in between, gives you tips, techniques, and strategies to make sure that you ace each round, ultimately getting to the job offer. And then we make sure that you don't leave any money on the table by giving you some strategies there as well. But if you want the recruiters to start coming to you versus the other way around, that is a much easier way to get hired. And that's why I created the course called Unlocking LinkedIn. And it teaches you how to set up your profile and to leverage the tool LinkedIn to get those recruiters to start contacting you versus the other way around. Even better, I teach you how to skip the recruiter altogether, get right to the front of the line, and that's the much easier way of getting hired. So if you're interested in learning how to leverage the power of LinkedIn, check out Unlocking LinkedIn. Hopefully you're not in a toxic work situation, but if you do notice these signs, it doesn't mean that you should immediately quit, but at least be paying close attention to them. And I like to keep these companies on a very short leash because, again, it's not worth risking your career. Appreciate you, and like always, appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.